In a dim, overlooked corner of Brookhaven Animal Haven, there was one kennel that nobody dared approach. Behind the rusted bars sat Ranger, a large German shepherd whose icy stare and thunderous growl were enough to make even the bravest staff members keep their distance. His reputation rippled through the shelter like a warning siren, aggressive, unpredictable, dangerous. Bold red signs screamed from every side of his enclosure, warning, "Do not approach." Volunteers whispered stories in hushed tones, swapping tales of failed attempts to get near him. Even seasoned handlers had emerged from his kennel with trembling hands, bloodied arms, and haunted eyes. To many, Ranger wasn't a rescue anymore, he was a lost cause. The shelter was no stranger to difficult cases. They'd seen dogs who had spent their lives chained in backyards with nothing but a rusted bowl and the ticking of time. They'd rehabilitated animals pulled from illegal fights, and puppies discarded like trash on the side of the road. But Ranger was different, not just afraid or defensive, but resolute in his fury, as if he'd made an oath never to trust again. Weeks passed, fewer people even glanced his way. He sat in his lonely corner, snarling at the world, a ghost of what a dog should be. He was a creature shaped by pain, scarred inside and out. His body bore signs of abuse, small burn marks, an old injury that caused a limp, and eyes that burned with a potent mix of fear and fury. Still, the staff tried. They brought in behavioral specialists with calm voices and firm postures, people who had worked miracles with dogs deemed unadoptable. They brought in trainers who came armed with patience and peanut butter treats. Even outreach teams from local rescue groups stepped in, hopeful hearts hidden under layers of protective gear. Ranger rebuffed them all. He refused treats, ignored soft voices, growled at every hand extended toward him. There was a haunting intelligence in his glare, as if he were reading every intention, scanning for deception. He trusted no one. To Ranger, kindness was a trap he'd seen before. One gray afternoon, longtime volunteer Mrs. Whitaker, who had spent more than 3 decades working with troubled animals, locked his cage with a sigh. "Someone shattered that dog," she said softly, her voice almost breaking. "He's not just scared, he's broken." She had seen it before, in dogs rescued from war zones, in animals left behind during foreclosures, their loyalty unrewarded, their trust punished. And sometimes, no matter how good your heart or how advanced your training, you couldn't fix a soul that didn't want to be saved. Then came a day that would change everything. The shelter was nearly silent, the rain tapping against the windows like a slow metronome. The hum of the fluorescent lights echoed in the hallways. The air was heavy with that familiar mix of bleach, wet fur, and quiet resignation. It was the kind of day where even hope moved a little slower. The front door creaked open, and in walked a little girl named Lila, her tiny fingers curled around her father's hand. She couldn't have been older than 7. Her raincoat was 2 sizes too big, and a patch of muddy hair peeked out from under a knit hat shaped like a cat. Unlike other kids her age, Lila wasn't there for a cute puppy. She wasn't pointing at every wiggling tail or squealing at floppy ears. She moved thoughtfully, eyes scanning each kennel with a seriousness far beyond her years. She was looking for something deeper, a friend. Her father, visibly tired and wearing the look of a man who had said yes to something he didn't quite understand, let her lead. They passed kennel after kennel, the noise of barking and whimpering creating a cacophony that often frightened children. But not Lila. She walked straight down the aisle as if guided by instinct. Then she stopped, dead in her tracks, her gaze locked onto Ranger's cage. Ranger, who had already risen to his feet, expecting the same reaction he always got, fear, retreat, maybe a shouted warning, stood silently. His lips curled, barely, but no sound escaped. His stance wasn't quite aggressive, more like confused. Her father instinctively pulled her arm, murmuring, "Not that one, sweetheart. He's not safe." But Lila didn't budge. She stepped closer to the gate and then, without hesitation, knelt silently in front of the cage, laying her small hand flat against the metal. She didn't speak. She didn't reach out. She just looked at him, calm, open, and unafraid. Ranger didn't growl. He didn't snarl or lunge. He simply looked back at her, eyes wide and searching. It was the first moment of stillness he had shown since arriving at the shelter. Something passed between them, not in words or sounds, but in presence. In silence. From across the room, the staff watched in disbelief. They whispered to each other, careful not to shatter the moment like glass underfoot. Someone even turned off the hallway radio, as if reverence were required. It was as though time had paused for them. And in that moment, as the rain traced silver trails down the shelter's windows, two broken souls, one in the body of a dog, the other in the quiet resilience of a little girl, sensed something familiar in each other. Was it possible that Ranger saw his own pain mirrored in her gentle eyes? Did Lila, perhaps unknowingly, recognize the weight of loneliness in his stance? Children have a strange way of understanding the unspoken. Maybe it was innocence. Maybe intuition. Or maybe, some hearts are just built to hear what the world has forgotten how to say. There's an old saying in rescue circles, you don't always get the dog you want. Sometimes, you get the dog who needs you. But in that moment, you couldn't help but wonder, maybe Lila needed Ranger just as much as Ranger needed her. From that day on, Lila begged her father to take her to see Ranger after school. Though hesitant, he couldn't deny her quiet determination. There was something unshakable in the way she spoke about Ranger, as if she'd made a promise that only her heart could understand. The staff allowed it, but only under strict supervision. They placed a chair a few feet from Ranger's cage and warned her not to try anything risky. Lila didn't mind. Each day, she arrived rain or shine, perching on her chair and speaking softly, reading from her favorite books, humming gentle tunes, or telling Ranger about her school day. Sometimes she brought crayons and would color while speaking aloud, narrating her drawings as if they were grand stories, tales of dragons and stars and heroes who healed with kindness rather than swords. She never reached for him, never pushed. She just showed up, quietly, consistently. There's something profound about consistency, especially to someone who's known only chaos. Dogs, much like people, find solace in patterns. In a world that had taught Ranger that every hand could hurt and every voice could deceive, Lila became his constant. Ranger watched, listened, and little by little, he began to change. The stiffness in his shoulders softened. His ears, always pinned back in tension, began to flicker toward her voice. His eyes, once blazing with rage, flickered with something new, a cautious hope, like a match lit in the darkness, flickering but refusing to die. Then one afternoon, as Lila's stuffed rabbit, soft, worn, and clearly well-loved, slipped from her lap and rolled near the cage, the entire room went still. Would Ranger snap? Would he bark or lunge? Instead, the German shepherd inched forward. Slowly, tentatively, he sniffed the toy, then looked back at Lila, his body tense but not hostile. His movement was the delicate choreography of someone navigating a world that had always punished curiosity. He didn't growl. He didn't retreat. He simply stayed. It was a crack in the wall, small, but undeniable. A moment most might overlook, but in rescue work, these moments are everything. They're the silent eruptions of trust, the hidden flowers blooming in the soil of trauma. Then came the morning that changed everything. Lila arrived early, a sandwich clutched in her hands. She tore off a small piece and gently tossed it near Ranger's cage. At first, he only stared. Seconds dragged. The room was silent. the kind of silence that stretches time. Then, like a leaf caught on the wind, Ranger crept forward and sniffed the crumb. Another long pause, and then, he ate it. The staff gasped. Lila's eyes lit up, wide and glistening. Still, she didn't move. She tore another piece, set it just inside the bars, and waited. No coaxing, no pleading, just offering. Ranger hesitated longer this time, muscles rigid, breathing shallow. He was a soldier on the battlefield of his own fear, weighing consequences that no one else could see. And then, he took it from her hand. The silence shattered into stunned tears. The unthinkable had happened, not just an act of hunger, but a first, fragile act of trust. It was like watching a glacier shift, subtle but seismic. Every inch a miracle. From then on, progress came faster. Ranger began to approach the bars when Lila arrived. His ears perked at her voice. His eyes followed her movements like a lighthouse follows the sea. He watched the door when she left, sometimes whimpering softly, pressing his nose against the gate. His bark, once a warning, had become a longing. They played simple games, rolling a ball, trading toys, sharing sandwiches. The wild dog once considered untouchable was now calm, responsive, even joyful. His transformation stunned the entire staff. It wasn't just a behavioral shift, it was a rebirth, and it had been initiated not by a renowned trainer, not by a fancy program, but by a child who believed in showing up. In many ways, Ranger's healing echoed stories from trauma therapy. Psychologists often speak about the power of co-regulation, the way one regulated nervous system can soothe another. Lila's steady presence, her softness, her lack of demand, was the very definition of this principle in motion. She wasn't trying to fix Ranger. She was simply being with him. Seeing the bond between their daughter and the once feral shepherd, Lila's parents worked with the shelter to arrange supervised outdoor visits. In the shelter's private yard, Ranger ran free for the first time in months, ears perked to the wind, paws kicking up dirt like they remembered what freedom felt like. But always, he returned to Lila's bench. It became a ritual. She would sit cross-legged with a blanket and Ranger would circle twice before curling up beside her, pressing his massive body to her legs like an anchor to the earth. Then one sunny afternoon, he approached her and laid his massive head in her lap. She wept as she stroked his fur, and he closed his eyes, not out of fear, not in defense, but in peace. They both had wounds, some visible, some not, but in each other, they had found healing. It didn't take long after that. Paperwork was filed, home inspections completed. Volunteers whispered with joyful disbelief. Ranger, who once needed multiple people to sedate him for routine checkups, now allowed his nails to be trimmed while resting his chin on Lila's knee. Then, it became official. Ranger was going home. The day he left Brookhaven Animal Haven, the staff lined up at the door. Some waved, others cried. Ranger didn't cower or hide. He walked proudly beside Lila, his tail swaying, his head held high. The shelter walls, once echoed with his rage, now held only the sound of quiet joy. It was a funeral for his old life, and a parade into his new one. At home, he explored every room with cautious delight, every new sound a mystery, every rug a discovery. But finally, when the tour was over, he settled, naturally, at Lila's feet, as if he had been born to do so, as if every scar, every scream, every lonely night in a kennel had led him to this single moment of rest. She wrapped her arms around him and whispered, "You're safe now, Ranger." And at last, he believed it. A German shepherd who once knew nothing but fear had found his family, his peace, and most importantly, someone who saw through the monster and found a heart worth saving. If Ranger and Lila's incredible journey touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and share this video to spread the message of second chances. Every view helps remind the world that even the most broken spirits can find healing through compassion and patience. Tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you met Ranger on that first day? Have you ever experienced a bond that changed your life, or saved it? Let's start a conversation in the comments. Your story might inspire someone else to take a chance, to show up, to believe, and of course, subscribe for more unforgettable true animal stories that prove love really can conquer all. Turn on notifications so you never miss a heartbeat.